if you're not going to pay the taxes, eventually, if they don't pay it, the property is going to be foreclosed and sold at auction.
We know for a fact there's going to be more tax liens and people not paying their taxes this year in 2023 than in 2022. When you don't pay your taxes after usually a year, you don't have a lien on the property, right? They don't put a lien on it yet. How to find cheap tax lien properties. What is up, guys? Zach in here.
Rick in here.
And in today's video, we're going to share with you exactly how you can find really cheap tax lien properties so you can wholesale them for big profits this year in wholesaling real estate. But before we break it down, do me a big favor. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and let's get into it. So the first question is, what is a tax lien and why are they so profitable for wholesaling real estate?
Tax liens are simple. It's actually what the two words says. So every property in the United States has taxes, which how they fund local counties and state operations, and they've got to be paid. So property taxes are paid before anything else on a property. Like they supersede all mortgages, any other types of liens. So what happens is when someone doesn't pay their property tax, so the cities and the counties can keep functioning, is they basically have a sale and they sell what they call a tax certificate. Now, understanding a tax certificate is just you basically fund the taxes and you get paid an interest rate, and they sell them basically on a bid on the interest rate of it. So they start at 18% and they go as low as like 0. And that's it. And usually after approximately 2 years, remember there's 3,500 counties, so they're all a little bit different, is the person that owns that certificate can force what they call a foreclosure, which basically puts it in a tax auction. And then people go, and the purpose of that is so the lien holder can recoup their money plus their interest. And then after that, the property would be sold to the highest bidder. Now, where the tax lien comes in is once there's a lien put on the property and it's not paid for, then that property is now basically, it has a tax lien against it and it needs to be funded one way or the other. So you can either wait till it goes to an auction or you can address it at the tax lien. The lien is now recorded on public record for you to know, for me to know, for Zach to know. And then that is a sign of distress. And that is a perfect point for you to approach a motivated seller, because let's face it, if you're not going to pay the taxes, eventually, if they don't pay it, the property is going to be foreclosed and sold at auction. So this is a perfect time to reach out to somebody and see if they want to sell the property. I never address them about the tax lien. And let's face it, once someone gets a year or two behind taxes, usually the property has to be sold. So why not create an amicable situation and help out those sellers? And that's why I love tax liens.
I agree. So usually it's 2 to 3 years, right? Pretty much governments give you at least a year, right? I see some cases where there's tax liens and they don't do the auction in like 5-6 years, right? Like some places are weird, right? Like even in our county, I see some properties where they try to sell the property within 2-3 years. And then some other places, it's like 5 years. The governments are all weird and wacky with it. So just like know every single county is a little different here. So just understand they're different, right? And I think these are so lucrative because coming into 2023, we know for a fact there's going to be more tax liens and people not paying their taxes this year in 2023 than in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, hands down. So remember, we've had huge price increases, and along with those higher sales prices comes a larger tax base. This is why the city and the counties love this stuff. But the problem is some people get a shock value when they get their tax bill. For the record, people who put down a tiny like down payment, usually 10% or less, the banks in their mortgage force them to escrow their taxes, which means they basically pay it monthly. Now, if somebody puts down a larger down payment, they get a tax bill at the end of the year. So we're right now, when they get their tax bill, they were planning on $3,000 or $4,000 because usually the first year they get by the time it gets to the end of the year, it could have tripled because the prices have gone so high. And they're like, my gosh, add on if they've had a change of life event, a loss of job, a reduction in job, or like a family death, then it's very cumbersome on the family and they got to figure it out. Now, let another year go by and the same thing happens. Now, that's twice the problem, twice the magnitude. So here's how I look at tax lien. Whenever there's smoke, there's usually fire. So as wholesalers, we're always looking for smoke. We're looking for motivated sellers. And that's how you find the motivated sellers. So tax liens are your ticket to find people that are going to have problems with houses. And with our previous history of the price run up, these tax bills are all now going to start coming due. And that's why it's a great time to dive into tax liens.
So here's the biggest question. Here's the $1 million question. You got us excited about pulling tax liens and going after this list. How do you do it, right? So let's kind of break down step by step how you actually do this. Well, before we get into it, we have to understand actually how the tax lien process works. So usually on average, about 2 years in, so when you don't pay your taxes after usually a year, you don't have a lien on the property, right? They don't put a lien on it yet. They're going to call you a tax delinquency. So there's a big difference between the tax delinquency list and the tax lien list. And what you got to understand is usually a year, maybe if the government is very slow, 2 years not paying your taxes. And then after 2 years, they're just going to slap a lien on the property and just go to the next thing, right? So you got to understand that's how the process works. So usually taxes are due in November for locally where we're at. I actually looked at some other places, like for example, Las Vegas, the taxes are due in June and July. So every single market has different places where has different times when the taxes are due. But usually a year after, let's say June or July, if you didn't pay the taxes, you're delinquent. When year 2 comes around, then you're going to get a lien on the property. So that's how the process works. So no, when somebody doesn't pay their taxes for the year, it's not automatically a lien list. It's actually a tax delinquency list, which we'll share in a bonus at the end of this video how to poll, but we're talking about the liens today because liens are more motivated, right? You don't pay for 2 or 3 years. That's a really good deal. And guys, we do so many deals where people are just not paying their taxes, not upkeeping the property. It's a great indicator for an ugly house and a great wholesaling real estate deal.
So let's get into how to find these tax liens. So since it's a lien, it is on public record. It is a debt recorded against the property. So you can actually easily find this. And here's the good news. You can actually find this for free if you want to go that route. So number one, simply go to your county and you want to look for the clerk of court. It's really, really simple. The clerk of court, and there should be a section in there where you can either, now remember there's 3,500 different counties. So I can't give you exact instructions, but go to your clerk of court, find the tax lien section. If you're going to have problems with this, either pick up your phone and call them and say, how do I research the tax liens? Or go down, if you can do it in person, and they'll give you a 10 or 15 minute instruction on how to do it. Once you learn it once, you never have to ask this question again. So remember, be curious and be nice when you do this. That is where they're all recorded with the clerk of court. The second one is you can work with your property appraiser's office. A lot of property appraisers, they're the ones that keep the initial record of when taxes don't get paid. And you can actually go in there and find that taxes are unpaid on any type of parcel of property. And you can see the history on it. And depending, once again, 3,500 counties on how your county operates, you can actually pull this data from your property appraiser. Once again, use the same instructions I gave you with the clerk of court and apply that to your property appraiser. So those are the 2 free ways. One of the more efficient ways you can do it is you can use a software company to accumulate this data for you. So you can use listrei.com or you can use zacdata.com. These are services that we use that you can easily do a search and use the filters, and all you do is pull up tax liens. Okay, it's very simple. You can classify them by year, you can do them by size, you can do them by how old they are, and you can really target it in. Don't get fancy with your filters, get the entire list, and then from there you can decide. What I do is I typically sort out like county-owned properties and stuff like that because we don't want to pursue those. So I'm looking for individuals that own these properties. You can do LLCs or corporations, so it's a little bit more challenging. And that's just an easy way without you having to go down to the courthouse or going down to the property appraiser's office. Either way, and if you have use of these services, go ahead and utilize them. But that's the simple strategy in locating these tax liens.
So the next thing here is, yes, I got the list. I paid for it. I got it for free, whatever way possible. But the most important part is like, how do I market to this list? How do I actually get this into a contract? Actually, how do I turn this into a really good wholesaling real estate deal? Now, there's one really simple solution, right? I would say for most of these lists, you can either cold call them. That's probably gonna be the most important one. That's gonna be the most popular way to do it. And by doing that, you just gotta skip trace to get their phone number right. So how do you do this? Go to either truepeoplesearch.com as a free skip tracing website, or you can just pay for this information, right? So you go to Batch Leads, aka zacdata.com, and get the skip tracing from there. Listrei.com's got great skip tracing. Whatever one, just skip trace, call them, get their phone number, right? What are some other really good marketing tactics? We found deals from the tax lien list. SMS text blasting is the second really good one. Direct mail's great. And one really underrated strategy is going to be reverse drawing for dollars, where drawing for dollars, you go into your car, look for ugly looking houses. But if you go grab a sticky note and say, write on it, hey, this is Zach, I had a quick question about your property, slap that on all the tax liens. This is why I really like dmzach.com, aka Deal Machine, because you can put in all the addresses, all the tax liens, import it, and then it will give you a route to drive of, let's say, 30 tax liens in your city. On a Saturday, just slap the sticky notes on there. Guys, it is absolutely powerful, and you'll make a ton of money doing it. And so now that we're marketing to these tax liens, we just have to understand one last thing, and it's the tax lien seller. The tax lien seller is a little different than the average motivated seller. Obviously, there is a little more issues with the property. So we get a lot of people that are starting out in wholesaling, they get really confused. They're like, Zach, how do I deal with this? If they're behind $6,000 on taxes, does that mean there's no clear title? Are the sellers wanting this crazy amount for the property? Are they going to get a foreclosure? How does this all process work? It's a little different, but if you know how to overcome it, you'll do very well.
So it's real simple. The one thing I've learned in my 20 plus years of dealing with tax liens is, and really anybody behind on their taxes, even the delinquencies, is there is one common trait, guys, and you need to know going into it. They are procrastinators. Now, every now and then there's some people that just hit hard times and they're much easier to deal with. But a lot of times, because they get scared when the tax bill comes and all these notices in red and pink come, sometimes they get notices delivered to the door. It's scary. And honestly, that's the sweet spot. If you can catch them early when the lien's recorded. I find after 3 months, they get pretty numb to it. And when they're used to it and they're like, well, no one's really chasing me down. No one's taking the house away. And then that creates the procrastination. So understanding they do take time. And that's the challenge with tax liens, tax delinquencies, because they get complacent with it. And then what happens is when they get that final notice and they're going to get an auction notice, there's massive urgency. So I like to try to catch them as early as I can, because honestly, at the very end, it's a little bit of a mess. As far as how much they get behind in taxes, you're like, how do I structure an offer? It's simple, guys. You've got to do low ball offers, because you're going to have to factor in, sometimes you have to pay the taxes as part of to sweeten the pot. So you have to have a lot of profit needs. So you can't buy these on narrow margins. Typically a tax lien, you're getting a nice healthy spread, because you have to have room if you have to pay that $6,000 or $10,000 in taxes, because sometimes that's the piece that puts people over the edge to take your deal. So make sure you got big profits in it, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, in case you have to negotiate paying off the tax lien bill itself, because a lot of times it's just a fulfillment for them and they feel really special if you'll do that for them. It's like you just solved their problem for it. So understand, procrastination is the root of your enemy there. So make sure you go over to freewholesaling.com and you use the upfront agreement, all the stuff, and understanding these are going to take a little bit of time to walk them to get an agreement to sell. But please don't wait till they get to the auction, because a lot of times it's too little too late at that point. So you want to catch them before.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. So let's just do a quick, really easy example. So if the property has a $60,000 mortgage and they're behind 2 years of taxes, $2,500 each. Really easy examples, right? So they're behind $60,000 on a mortgage and $5,000 in taxes. So if I agree to buy the property for $100,000, that means at the end of the day, because we're paying the closing costs, they would get $35,000. So if the seller ever asks you, Zach, I need to get $35,000 out of this deal, or I need to get $30,000 that I walk home with, that's what it means, right? So don't feel like, oh my gosh, they owe money on this, like I can't do a deal. Yes, they will get $35,000. The title company will give $60,000 of the money from the cash buyer to the mortgage company, and then $5,000 to pay off the taxes, and then the rest goes to the seller. So in wholesaling real estate, let's say I put it under contract for 100, knowing they owe 65 on it, and I find a cash buyer who wants to buy the deal for 120,000. At closing day, cash buyer is going to give 120,000 to title company, 20,000 goes to me in a nice check, 60 goes to the mortgage, 5 goes to the taxes, and the seller gets 35,000. It's a win-win-win situation. So guys, these sellers, they need your help. Give them a cash solution, help them save their houses. In most cases, they're actually going to probably net more money than going through an auction, because of all the fees and issues with going through that. Sometimes, with the chance of an auction, they might not get what they actually want and deserve. And most importantly, a lot of these sellers decide to sell because of their dignity. They don't go through the entire auction. They don't go through the whole trauma of that process. It's not fun. I talk to a lot of sellers like this. You do not want to be dealing with that situation. So it's definitely something where you can go out here and help the sellers out, do the marketing strategies, go to stinkingfreewholesaling.com and learn wholesaling for free. And let's get some deals, guys. This is Zach and signing out.
Rick and signing out.
Have a blessed one.
See you guys.